And hello, friends, and welcome to another episode of Chapters here on Armstrong Television. Chapters is the show that profiles authors, editors, and publishers in West Virginia, Ohio, and Kentucky. I'm Eliot Parker, and it's great to have you with us. We are talking about movies, books, and literature today on this episode of Chapters, and we're pleased to have with us today writer, reader, and film director Paul Moore, as well as writer and editor Eugene Johnson, who is back with us on the program after being with us a couple of years ago. Paul Moore joins us today. He's a filmmaker who has written and directed 4 feature films, most recently Keepsake and Requiem, starring Tony Todd and Jeff Fahey. He's also the co-owner of movie production studio Blind Tiger Filmworks. His short stories have been featured in several anthologies, including his short story Things, which was featured in Drive-In Creature Feature, which was released by Evil Gesture Press in 2016. His story The War Room was included in the political horror anthology Dread State, released by Thunderdome in the late fall of 2017. He's currently working on several other exciting writing and film projects. And Eugene joins us today. He's been a storyteller for as long as he can remember, creating and writing stories whenever possible. He's worked on several feature short films, such as 16 to Life and We Are Marshall. In 2009, he was executive producer for the horror film Leftovers with director Paul Moore, which was featured at the Screamfest Film Festival in Hollywood, California, and on Dragon Con as well. His nonfiction book, Where Nightmares Come From, was co-edited by Joe Meinhardt and was released from award-winning Crystal Lake Publishing. Eugene also has several other projects in the works, including his children's book series Life Lessons with Little Monsters, the Fantastic Tales of Terror anthology featuring Joe Lansdale, Jonathan Mayberry, Christopher Golden, and more, and Where Nightmares Come From, which we're going to talk a little bit about today. So, gentlemen, welcome to Chapters. It's great to have you here as we talk about books and writing and film.
Thank you for having us. Absolutely.
Thank you so much for having us.
So, Paul, I wanted to start with you, sort of a lighthearted question as we get started here, because this is something that everybody always wants to know if you're a reader or a film goer or both. Why is the movie so different from the book? No matter what it is, why is the movie always so different from the book?
Well, the movie is usually, typically a paperback book is, 350 to 400 pages, somewhere in there. I mean, some are shorter, some are larger. A movie script, 90 to 110, 120 pages, right? And so things have to be cut, obviously for time purposes, and to press things down. And if you have drama, character development, action, all of those things, you're going to find that everyone's going to have a different opinion on what to remove from the book. However, it is a business. So when it comes down to it, the action is not going to be the first thing to go. They're going to preserve the big marquee sequences in the book. And then they'll figure out which other sections they can or can't include based on time. And also, as we were discussing earlier, sometimes the natures of characters are changed just because you remove a subplot that way. It's like, okay, if we don't make this guy interested in this girl, if we just leave that romantic subplot out, that frees us up to focus on, the shark attacks, the alien attacks, whatever it is that's going on there. Readers are very passionate about anyone who's read a series of books, a popular series of books. We talked about Harry Potter earlier, or any number of things. You could ask them, if you were to make a movie, how would you do it? And everyone would have a different answer, because everyone has found something special or different or unique to latch onto in that book. I like all types of fiction. Starship Troopers is a fantastic book. Bears virtually no resemblance to the movie at all, right? Which one's better? It depends on your taste, right? The messages and the themes in the book were pretty much stripped out, and it was repackaged as a much more action-centric type of thing and all of that good stuff. And for some people, that's great. For other people, they believe it's blasphemy that somebody has taken this science fiction classic and stomped all over it. But that is the inherent problem. How do you take an entire world that exists in your head, his head, my head? Because reading is a very personal experience, and our imaginations are what take us from the words that are there, and then we picture them. We picture what the aliens or the monsters or the spaceships or what all those things look like. Books don't really give uber detailed descriptions of what models or things are going to look like. Somebody else reinterprets that for the screen. And if they happen to have sensibilities similar to yours, you're like, yeah, that was a good adaptation. But if they don't, you're back in that place where it's like, no, that's not at all how it was in the book. Well, how it was in the book is really how it was in your head.
Right.
And that's a wonderful thing. That's where the theater of the mind takes over, and anything is possible. So
Interesting, very interesting. I love that answer because that happens so many times. A question always comes up for people that read and watch the movies or watch the movie, then go back and read the book is why they're so different. How did you get it? And this is a question for both of you. How did you get interested in film and that whole process of getting involved with film?
Okay. For me, I was in college and kind of trying to find my way. You know, I started out, I don't even remember what I started out in, honestly, as a major, but it wasn't really where I wanted to be, and I wasn't exactly sure where I wanted to be. So, at the time, to make ends meet and all that, I was working as a private investigator and a bounty hunter and things like that, and that kind of pulled me away from college. But I saw no future there. That was a money-making job. That was purely a step. But so I went back into college full time and found that my focus really was in the world, what I originally thought was the world of film. I was like, yep, this is interesting to me. This is something that I can find a niche in. So I had degrees in film. I also, at the same time, was taking a lot of theater, so I could learn how to communicate with actors and things like that. And then it came time to, you write your senior thesis film and that kind of thing, and then came time to graduate, and it's like, all right, what's the next move? Just so happens, a good friend of mine who was going to school elsewhere had returned to town. His name is Scott Tanner, my producing partner to this day. And he had the answer, and the answer was, well, let's just do it, right? Well, that meant that I was writing a script that had a substantial amount of money attached to it, and that started me down the road of writing, of really understanding how to build a film, not how to mimic a film. I mean, we can all find the structure of a standard horror film, which is the genre that I typically work in, by watching them. But that's just hitting the beats. That's just, okay, every 5 minutes, da-da-da has to happen. And I was interested in not just, like I said, aping what I saw there, but figuring out why that worked, why those beats were there, and what could you do with them and change them. So then we went out and made our first film, actually, in Point Pleasant, West Virginia. And everything I just said, I threw out the window and hit all the standard beats right along. And while I'm very proud of the film, it's not a very good film, right? It isn't. But it was the learning process. It was the beginning of the process that took me down the road of really focusing on script writing, because we really did want to make better and better films. And that's one of the things I'm very proud of, is that our films, which have appeared on television and home video back when that was a thing, and many festivals, as you mentioned earlier, very kindly, but each one of our films got better, and they got more sophisticated. And at one point we did one called Keepsake, and it screened out at Man's Chinese Theater, part of Screenfest. It was very big for us. But a lot of people who worked on it lived in the Ohio and West Virginia region. So there was I believe it's a now defunct film festival, the Appalachian Film Awards.
Yeah, it was the Appalachian Film Festival, ran and put on by the Huntington Film Commission. That it was around for about 10-15 years, and then it went defunct about I don't know, maybe 4 years ago.
Yeah, probably about that. And so they wanted to screen Keepsake up here at the Marquee Cinemas in Pullman Plaza. And we thought, this is a great opportunity for the people who worked on it in that region, in that area, because a lot of our crew, which we worked with from the very beginning, came with us on many of our other movies. And even though Keepsake was shot in Virginia, there were plenty of Ohioans and West Virginians there. So we said this would be a great opportunity to have that there so they could see it. Those people who couldn't make it to L.A. or et cetera, before it came. And Eugene was my liaison for that, right? Well, we got to talking after we had a very successful screening of it. By the way, it was a full house and everybody loved it. And we started talking about additional projects, and that was how he became involved in Leftovers, right? He produced it, and we put it together, and right back out to Los Angeles with that one. It was a success, a very good success. And that's when we started to talk about writing.
Yeah, that's when I've always wanted to be a storyteller because I grew up on films when I was a kid, The Twilight Zone. I've known you forever, so you and I've always wanted to be writers since college. And one of the reasons I've always wanted to be a storyteller is because my grandmother, she would raise me on Stephen King, The Twilight Zone, the old Hammer films, Creature from the Black Lagoon. And so I always grew up loving all different types of storytelling and wanting to tell stories. A very active imagination. And so I kind of got into film because I grew up loving movies. All kinds of movies, even though I was kind of tilted to the, as Joe Lansdale calls them, the world of the fantastic, sci-fi and horror and all that. And so when I came to college, when I came to Marshall, I was going to do art education and theater education because I wanted to do comic books and be a comic book writer and creator. And they didn't really have a program like that around here. So I decided to go into that. And then I got drawn into wanting to do film. And I found the Huntington film. I found out there was a lot of independent film around here, especially with the college. And I got into doing independent films, and then part of the Huntington Film Commission. And part of my job there was helping bring films in and bigger projects to help feature. Like we brought in D.B. Sweeney one year. He came in and I can't remember what the name of the movie is, but it was a movie that actually featured some guys going to a Marshall game. And then another year, we were trying to figure out about a film to bring, and I had worked with some people. What was his name? Who was it? Kyle worked on Keepsake.
Oh, yeah, Kyle Quinn. Yes.
And I was friends with him, and I've worked on some short films with Kyle. And Kyle told me about Keepsake, so I contacted Paul and I said, would you like to bring your film? So I was responsible and set up Keepsake. And from there, we hit it off, and I would always bring these little journals, and which you probably remember from college, and write my short stories in. And Paul noticed it on set one day, and he's like, why aren't you writing? And we got in this, we would talk for a month on the phone about writing and how film and writing really just the art of storytelling. It all starts from the story and the idea, and it goes to writing, and it can translate to film, it can translate to short stories and novels. And then we started going down the path of not just doing filmmaking, but also doing writing.
And that leads us to your upcoming collection, Where Nightmares Come From, The Art of Storytelling in the Horror Genre. Crystal Lake Publishing has published that. And that focuses on the art of storytelling, sort of in the horror genre, which kind of ties into what you all have been talking about here so far. Taking an idea from conception to reality, whether you prefer short stories, novels, whatever, films or comics. But you've got a lot of really great writers in this collection, Eugene. You've got Joe Lansdale, Clive Barker, John Connolly, Ramsey Campbell, Stephen King, Christopher Golden, Charlene Harris. I mean, it just goes on and on. How did this book come together, and what's the importance of this book for folks who are maybe thinking about writing in that genre, not writing in the horror genre, or just thinking about taking an idea from what's inside your head, either onto paper or onto the computer screen?
Well, I just love storytelling, whether it's film, whether it's comic books, whether it's horror, drama. I just love love it, you know. And so one of the big things you'll hear, and you probably hear this in your classroom, is where do ideas come from? And how do you take that idea? And you probably hear this as a director. I know when we go to conventions, I've heard, like, we know Tony. I know he's heard that sometimes. Where do ideas come from for a character? You know, how do you develop it? Where does your ideas come from for a story or a film? And I've even asked that of big name writers like Joe Lansdowne, Jonathan Mayberry, and it's one of those kind of dreaded questions where that's kind of a hard question to answer. So I thought it would be neat to look at the whole art of storytelling, which is really hard to do, but just kind of touch on it. And since I tend to dabble a lot in horror, I kind of focused on that because that's where a lot of my contacts were. And I just kind of reached out to some of the top people I knew and had contacts with and said, hey, this is what I'm planning on doing. And Paul's also in the book, and he covers film and screenwriting. And we just wanted to put something together that could help the beginning writer, person that wants to tell stories, no matter what medium it is, to kind of take that first step. And it's a hard first step. You know, Paul's been there. Paul just finished, he just debuted a fantastic, I think it's his best work yet, called Paper Wasp. He actually had a showing of it yesterday here for all the cast and crew. And one of the reasons I think it's his best work is because I think it's one of the most simplistic ideas yet complicated ideas he's worked with, and he delivers it so well, both in the writing and on film. I hope you don't mind me saying that.
Absolutely, not at all.
And it hits just all the key. It hits every point. And I think as a writer, and you're a writer and you teach we want to know how to take an idea and hit those points. We want to know how to develop it. So the book, it looks at those. It looks at how Joe Lansdowne looks at. It's not the story all the time. It's sometimes the storyteller, and vice versa. We look at the genres, you know, sci-fi, and of course with this particular book, why horror? Why do we like being scared? We look at dialogue with a wonderful writer, Mercedes Yardley. She's very brilliant at using dialogue to bring a story to life. And the list just goes on. Like you said, Stephen King is in there with a frequent collaborator of his, Richard, the creator and owner of Cemetery Dance Publications. They just recently came out with that book, Gwynny Button Box. Wonderful book, and they talk about collaboration, and they're interviewed by another fantastic nonfiction author, Bev Benson. So it offers something for everybody to help you develop your ideas and help you as a storyteller.
I wanted to go back to Paul for just a second, because Eugene really gave us some insight into some things that all writers, even these experienced writers that are coming out in this collection, Where Nightmares Come From, can deal with. Paul, in terms of making film, or maybe taking a book, turning it into a script and making it into film, what is it like being on a film set? Because we as viewers oftentimes see the final product, and we go to the theater and we sit down, we have the popcorn and something to drink. But briefly, what is that? What is sort of the organized chaos like when you're on a film set trying to get actors positioned and shots taken and recorded and cut and all that sort of stuff?
Yep, and I would love to answer that if I could remember any of it, because it's all such a big blur. And yes, organized chaos is often used to do that. And one of the reasons I love making films is because it's a very collaborative art. And if you find the right people to collaborate with, you're going to have a wonderful time. You're going to make a wonderful film. If you find the wrong people, the results, are obviously not going to be as well. But I have had the pleasure of working with a lot of fantastic people both in front of and behind the camera. But it is a machine where you are always on the move, right? There are multiple parts that are all clicking along to come to wardrobe, makeup, set design, lighting, the grip, the dolly work, the camera, and all of that is happening simultaneously. And there are many positions to help organize this. You have a director, you have an assistant director, you have a second assistant director, you have a second assistant director. And those things are all real things, and they move around and they try to keep the machine moving. It never moves flawlessly. Every day that you're on a set is a good day, but you don't have nearly as many good days on sets as you would think. Because there are all manner of things, everything from the weather to, outside factors to things breaking down and all of that kind of thing. But because you're putting the pieces together right there in front of your eyes. You are literally creating the pieces of the puzzle that will eventually be completed into a picture. It's a very fulfilling experience. It's almost like when you write a story, all of that is coming in your head, and then you just lay it down on paper. This character went to point A, met this character, they went to point B, and so on and so forth. And you see it in your head, in your imagination, as you're typing it along. But when you're making a film, you're seeing it in reality. And you are revising it as you go, as you see the strengths and weaknesses. And so there's a multitude of creative processes and problems that happen that are, to certain people, almost an addiction of wanting to see that to its completion. And so there's no other place I'd rather be than on a set working with great people. I think most filmmakers would say that even though it is very chaotic, and even though but you find yourself in the trenches with these people. You have very quickly fused and passionate bonds with these people because you've all united in a single purpose to make this happen, and it is a thrilling experience. Also, a lot of tempers flare, a lot of things go, not as you want, but in the end, everybody kind of, hugs it out, and it's all good. And if you were working with good people who are genuinely committed, almost every time your product is what you want it to be.
If I could throw in something there.
Sure.
He told a brilliant story yesterday. We just watched this new film, Paper Wasp, that he had just debuted for us around here yesterday. And there's this great scene. It's one of my favorite scenes in the movie where it has a priest in it. Mm-hmm. And he's up in the woods trying to unsolve this mystery. And it's very well done, and it's kind of tense. And it's a very key moment of the film, and you get really into it, and it's very well done. And then I'm talking with Paul, and I wasn't on the set for that, and I'm getting pulled in and loving it and love the film. And then as we're meet and we have dinner afterwards, they're telling us about these scenes, and that particular scene was complete. It was not as smooth as you think it was. It was complete chaos. It went. You said it was going almost 24-hour days for like a week. Their truck, they were driving up in Wayne County, Mount Hope, in the middle of nowhere, was breaking down, and they were stuck there at 2:00 in the morning. They couldn't get the shot done. So this beautiful shot, it took a whole week, maybe longer, right?
Yeah.
And it really was about 5 minutes on film.
If that. Yeah.
If that. Beautiful 5-minute scene. And it actually took a whole week. And a truck broke down. They had to run and get an emergency
Truck broke
part.
down, and then it got it back up. Then we got back to town, and it just decided to have a flat tire. And, you're talking about a truck with probably $500,000 worth of equipment in it, et cetera, just sitting. I think it was sitting on the bridge between Huntington and Chesapeake. And that was after an 18-hour day that we had put in. And I believe the temperature that night, topped out in the mid-20s.
Oh wow.
Yeah. It was
So
ugly.
all of that going in basically for a 5 minute scene that looked beautiful and wonderful, but everything that went on behind the scenes to get that 5 minutes
Yeah, and you
that nobody sees.
and you don't see it. I've worked on 2 or 3 films with you here and there. One of his biggest films is Requiem with Tony Todd. It's one of my favorite experiences because I got to know Tony Todd. He's from The Rock. He's in almost 300 films, right?
Oh,
in
easily,
television.
easily.
I mean,
Candyman, The Rock.
Night of the Living Dead. He was recently Zoom on The Flash, the voice. One of the nicest character actors you could ever meet. And you get on the set. He was also a producer, wasn't he?
What? Of Requiem?
Yeah. Was he a producer?
No, I don't. No, I don't
Okay.
think it was.
But he was one of those actors. You get on there, and Paul would get there, and he would shoot, and the scene would go on. But like Paul said, he didn't know what was going on because Paul was just masterful at trying to bring the directing and the acting, and then all this organized chaos is going on. You know, we had a hose and a light breakdown. I remember being
yeah.
there for that.
Oh. Generators failing. All I mean, you name it.
So this sort of sounds like the same experience you go through when you're revising the first draft of your manuscript.
Oh, absolutely.
You've got paragraphs that break down. You've got things that overturn. You've got things that just stop working in your narrative. You've got all of these things. It just happens in a different way with film.
And I would even add to what you said, to build on what you just said. You have all of that, and then you have to release that, or some people do and some people don't, to a select few individuals who are either your trusted confidants that you say, hey, would you read this and tell me what you think, or they're your publishers and say, all right, well, here's what I have so far. How are you feeling? And all those things, like you said, when you're writing your manuscript and you're sticking holes or sticking your fingers in holes in the dam, right? You're trying to get it all to come together, and then you get feedback, and some of the feedback makes you feel really good. You're like, oh, okay, all right, I got it. And then some of the feedback's like, oh, God. I knew that was a problem, but I was hoping no one would notice, right? I was hoping I could slide that one, but it's just not going to work. And then you have to go back, because, I mean, how many times do you revise a manuscript?
Oh,
Yeah.
three or four at least for me.
And that's a full revision. That's not even counting all those little, oh wait, I got an idea for that paragraph, or I got an idea for that. So you run in and you make a quick little, adjustment there. I do that a lot, where I'll, it's one of the beauties of the modern smartphone is it has a notes feature in it, and I am using that all the time as I'm, whatever, driving down the road or eating lunch and going, oh, that's right, I could do that, da-da. And even that's part of the revising,
He's not joking. You'll see him on set, and you have no clue. You think he's talking to himself or something if you see him from behind. You think he's lost his mind. When he turns around, he's holding it and he's making notes, for that. Because what do we say? We say that for writing, a book is not written, it's rewritten. You've heard that.
That's right.
Like
The writing is in the rewriting.
Yeah, indeed.
I've heard you say that with a film, it's the editing and the directing that bring it together. Because then after he's done directing, he spends a lot of time. And he has a fantastic. Todd does a lot of the.
Oh yes, Todd Gilpin, who's a fantastic editor, lives in Chesapeake, Ohio.
So before we run out of time, gentlemen, because
Oh.
we could talk. I'd love to talk more, and I wish we had more time to talk. But Eugene, let me start with you. If anybody wants to get in contact with you to talk to you about future projects you have, what you're working on, talk to you about where nightmares come from, the art of storytelling, and the horror genre, how can they get in contact with you? And then Paul, same question to you.
Both of us, we could be found on Facebook. You could reach out to us on Facebook. Where Nightmares Come From has a Facebook webpage. Reach out to us, send us a message there, and I'm on Facebook. And you're on Facebook too. You send a message
Absolutely.
there. But that's probably the best place to get a hold of us. Send a message there. Same
And
thing
I
for-
would say, depending on what you're interested in, because there's a few entities here. There is the film studio
Yep.
that we own, myself and Scott Tanner own in Petersburg, Virginia, and it's a film studio designed for independent filmmakers. It has 28 individual apartments for the crew. It has a complete airy lighting package truck, the Fisher Dolly, red cameras, on and on. Everything you need to make makeup rooms, commercial kitchen, all that to make a film. And there's a website, blindtigerfilmworks.com, and that's one way to reach if that's what you'd like to talk about or discuss with me or those types of things. Then right now I'm spending a lot of time working on promoting Paper Wasp. So there's a website there with an email address for that, and then of course, as he said, Facebook, Instagram, all of that, both for that film studio, for Paper Wasp, and for myself, Paul Moore. And so there's a lot of email addresses you can find out there that'll be linked back to me. So one way or another, you can certainly get hold of me.
Sounds great.
And we talk all the time, so if you can't get a hold of him, usually, or me,
Absolutely,
we can get a hold
absolutely.
of each other.
Sounds great.
And I'd like to go and say I absolutely welcome anyone with any questions or ideas or thoughts or criticisms or whatever it is. I love to hear from people, because one of the things you don't want to be as a writer or a filmmaker is a person who is insular, who's living in a vacuum, because then you're going to learn a lot more by listening than you are by talking.
Yeah.
And I mean, like you said, the three of us could probably go on for the next 4 hours talking and trading ideas and debating and so on and so forth.
Absolutely.
And it'd be a fantastic time.
And it has been a fantastic time. Our guests here today on Chapters have been filmmaker Paul Moore and author and editor Eugene Johnson. We've been talking about filmmaking, taking books and transitioning them to film, some of the challenges that are there. We've also been talking about Eugene Johnson's upcoming book that he helped edit with Joe Meinhardt, which is called Where Nightmares Come From, The Art of Storytelling in the Horror Genre. So Paul and Eugene, thanks so much for being on Chapters, and we appreciate you coming on, and good talking with you today.
Absolutely. It was my pleasure.
We also want to take a moment to thank the staff and management of Empire Books and News for providing our on-site support and assistance today. We encourage you to come down to Empire Books and News to inquire about Eugene's upcoming nonfiction anthology, and also to find out more about the authors, editors, and publishers you've seen featured here on the program. Many of them have their works for sale right here at Empire Books and News, located at Pullman Square in Huntington. We also want to take a moment to remind you that we've got 3 ways that you can reach out to the program via social media. The first is our email address, which is here at the bottom of the screen, lp4@zoominternet.net. We ask that you please leave your name and where you're writing from so that we can keep track of that correspondence. If you like to watch programming on YouTube, we've made that available to you through the Armstrong One Wire page on YouTube. That address is right here at the bottom of the screen as well. Once you type that into your search browser, just click on the Chapters tab, and from there we've got all of our author, editor, and publisher interviews archived for you there to view at any time. And if you're a Facebook user, we've also got a way for you to keep in touch with the program through Facebook. All you need to do is go to facebook.com/Chapters TV show. From there, click on that link, and we've got all of our most recent author, editor, and publisher interviews archived for you there through the Facebook page. So whether you like Facebook, whether you like YouTube, or whether you like email, we've made a way for you to stay in touch with the program. We know many of you have done that, so please keep those comments and feedback coming. And that's going to do it for us this time on Chapters, but please come again next time. And in the meantime, stay tuned to this station for news and views that impact you and your community.